Hey kids, just say no to Android and iOS because these are locked down terrible platforms controlled by terrible companies, which is why I went with a Linux phone for 30 days. Now in retrospect, starting a video with "Hey kids" is probably not the best intro on YouTube. We'll see if it creates any issues. Now realistically, Android and iOS, they're fine. They're fine operating systems. They do whatever you want. The main problem with them is that they are controlled by absolutely horrendous companies that are trying to lock you in. Just look at Google, supposedly with the open Android platform, and down there requiring every developer to register with them, even if they just want to make an APK outside of the Play Store. That is insane. And of course, on a Linux phone, you're just not gonna have that issue. Now, I covered Ubuntu phone in the past a little bit, but now here is the final verdict. After 30 days of this being my only phone in my pocket, what did it do? How well did it work? And am I going to stick with it? We're gonna look at everything, including our sponsor, Proton VPN. Now you all know why you need a VPN in your toolbox. It's basically one of the nicest barriers and protections to make sure that what you visit online doesn't end up in the hands of your ISP. You can block trackers, you can access websites that are blocked in your country, you can view shows, TV shows, movies from countries that you don't live in. It's fantastic. And the one I use and I trust is Proton VPN because they have a strict no logs policy, so they don't know what you visited and they can't share that with anyone, even through a request. They also have plenty of servers everywhere around the world for great speeds. They will automatically block ads and trackers when you enable it, and of course they have applications for Linux, for Android, for iOS, and plenty of others. They're really fantastic. They've been a sponsor of the channel for a long while. They're the ones I use on my phone, at least on iOS, and a little bit on Waydroid on that Linux phone too, and it works really well. So do check them out. The link, as usual, is down in the description. So I announced this experiment explaining why I wanted to move to it, and now it's been 30 days that I've used this phone, specifically this Vola phone Quintus, which runs by default Ubuntu Touch. You can buy it with Ubuntu Touch, and that's what I got. So I didn't have to go through any install process. It was just straight in the phone, and yeah, nothing to do except configure it and launch it. So I did all my messaging from it, I took all my pictures, I even went one full week on vacation with no other phone at all in my pocket, just this one, which was a big crash test of a thing, because if something went wrong, I was basically left without any electronic device for a week, and I made it back okay, so that's good. So I'll cover what worked, I'll cover what worked less well, I'll cover the Waydroid elephant in the room that you actually kinda need to have this phone work as a reliable day-to-day device. I will also cover what almost broke that entire experiment a few weeks in. I'll go over all the applications that I used to make this thing work, what I installed, the tweaks I applied with the Ubuntu Touch tweak tool, and we'll talk about the latest update that is probably not yet released by the time you're watching this, but that is on the way, at least in beta form, and the improvements in broad because it fixed a lot of the issues that I had early on at the beginning of this experiment, which is pretty neat. So let's begin with what worked well, and generally the interface of Ubuntu Touch. I already covered it in a specific video, so obviously I'm not going to go back through it again and again, but that interface works really well. You have your dock with your pinned apps, you've got a list of applications that you can run, you've got this multitasking view where you can swipe applications up to close them, or you can just quick swipe on the edge to switch between the two most recent applications. You have all your indicators in the top panel, complete now with notch support. In the previous version that I used before going on vacation, this did not exist, so basically indicators were hidden behind the little notch, which I don't think you can see on the screen recording. But yeah, so you can see the notch here. Well, icons went behind it previously, and now they don't, which is nice. There are still some issues with the little white bar displayed underneath the icons, but it's much better than it used to. Generally, that interface is nice. It works well. It still has a few issues, notably the fact that back buttons, for example, are always in the top left corner, so are the menus generally, which is a little bit annoying, because obviously on a tall phone like this, accessing the top left corner with your hand is very annoying and requires some gymnastics. But apart from that, it was a pretty great experience all around. Something I learned to like as well is certain apps have a bottom swipe to do something. For example, in the messaging app, writing a new message is invoked by swiping from the bottom. And there are other apps that use this to their advantage. That's also pretty good. It's easier than typing the plus button on the top part of the application. So with two-handed use, it's pretty neat. Now the apps list itself is a bit basic. You don't have folders, you can't really reorder them. But you're not going to have 200 apps on that list because most of the apps you will use are in Waydroid. The main ones, the day-to-day very basic utilities, are all available on Ubuntu Touch, or at least you have at least one candidate for that works pretty well. But everything else, you're gonna have to go through Waydroid and add specific Android applications to fill in the gap. But this works pretty well as well. We'll talk about it in a minute. Oh yeah, and I was, of course, also able to make and receive phone calls. There were a bunch of those. I don't use the phone feature that much, honestly, on my phone, but as you can see, there are some phone calls. Numbers should be hidden on screen, hopefully. But yeah, that works. I never mentioned that when I review phone, because obviously texting and phone calls, that's normal. It should work. So if it didn't work, I would mention it, but when it does, I don't. Also, one thing that is pretty useful, you can just plug the phone in to your PC and access the internal storage straight from there without any specific configuration. You might want to enable that in the USB settings, where you can choose between charging, file transfer, or even USB tethering for potential connection. But it works. That's neat. You can just copy-paste photos if you want. You can transfer files. So in general, Ubuntu Touch was very nice to use, very simple, very easy. And for things that did not work properly straight from Ubuntu Touch, of course, Waydroid was there. Now let's move on to all the applications that I used on Ubuntu Touch, and there are plenty from the open store thing that Ubuntu Touch comes with. So I do use Nextcloud quite a bit, and fortunately for me, recently there were applications developed just for that, in the form of NextDeck, Next News, and a few others, including Next Notes. This developer has published a bunch of cool stuff, so thanks Tobias Johansson, because they made an application for decks, they made an application for tasks, they made an application for notes. And so currently I use the Next Notes and Next Tasks application from them, which is pretty freaking fantastic. It just connects to my Nextcloud server. I can select all the categories that appear here. I can manage the account. I can have a few settings as well. It's a fantastic application, and I can just view my notes and my scripts, where you can see this video is not very scripted. I just have a bunch of talking points that I sort of try to read. The thing I missed though is photo sync through Nextcloud. Theoretically, there is something that should do it, and it is a Ghost Cloud photo backup. It is supposedly going to sync things to your Nextcloud account, but it did not work for me. What it did is create just a single entry in the Nextcloud folders list, but it never synced any of the photos that I took in my camera roll on this, which is unfortunate. I also used Podcat, which is this application here. It just lets you play like podcasts. Simple enough. You have your podcast. It can play it. That's about it. You can put it on a queue, you can download new episodes. It works, it's neat, it's a good application. For PDFs, I used Storm Reader, which is this little app here. You can swipe from the bottom to see a few controls. You can open PDFs. That's what I use for my my plane ticket, basically my boarding pass. I just stored it in there and I scanned the QR code there and it worked. And of course, you can store many documents in here as well. And it's mostly used technically as an ebook reader, but it works for any PDFs you want, which is pretty neat. For messaging, I used What's New. There are two apps on Ubuntu Touch that do WhatsApp pretty well. There's What's Web and What's New. I used What's New. I think it's just better. It supports notifications when it's open in the background. You can force it to never close if you want that, so you can always get notifications. You just need to remember to always open it, because if you don't when you reboot your phone, then you won't have any notifications for messages, which is annoying. But it works well, it's fine, it's fast, you can just type whatever you want using the keyboard. It's very good, like there's absolutely no problem, it's fine. For my music, I used Sonic Player. This lets you connect to any subsonic server, which is what I run on my Nextcloud instance to host all my music. So you can just have your music, you can download it, you can play that music, You can pause it, you can view your playlist, you can create playlists, you can love tracks, you can have the view from albums, artists, whatever else. Anything you want, it just works. You have online radios as well if you add them, and you have an offline mode for everything that you downloaded. Pretty fantastic app and quick to load and to download too. For all of that experiment, I also used the default Morph browser, which is the one that comes with Ubuntu Touch. And I'll be honest, this sucked ass for most of those 30 days. Morph is based, or was based, on an extremely old Chromium version, which rendered, for example, this page, the Warhammer community website, which no one cares about unless you play Warhammer. You had no images for any of these articles. It loaded very slowly. It had bugs everywhere. Playing videos was stuttery and messy. Scrolling was also extremely slow. Fortunately, in the latest update, which is still in beta as I'm recording this, you got a big bump from this browser to a much newer version of Chromium, and now it works insanely better, and I don't have to go into Waydroid as much to actually use a web browser, which is good. Now, I also decided to trust one specific app, which is called UAdblock NG. This is a system-wide ad blocker. Supposedly, it has been vetted by the Ubuntu Touch team. That's what they say, at least on the Open Store, but they do say, hey, only install this if you actually trust it. I decided to go with it because not having an ad blocker in the default browser was insanely annoying, so I just added it then, and navigation became much quicker and much nicer, and no ads on the entire system is also pretty freaking cool. But maybe I shouldn't have, maybe this is stealing data from me, I have no idea, and I wouldn't recommend anyone do that. I also did use the default calendar, which can sync with Nextcloud with another application if you want that, so I can have all my events in there. I used my calendar, I used the built-in camera, I used the built-in contacts, I used Deco 2, which is an email client made specifically for Ubuntu Touch that also works really well, honestly. You can get all your folders, you can send your emails, it looks pretty decent, it works. It's a fine email client for my main channel email. I also did use the built-in Notes app before the next Notes application released. This one I won't keep using because it only syncs with something like Evernote, which, I don't know, does somebody still use that? I personally prefer Nextcloud, so that's what I'm gonna use instead. But I did type in a few notes in there as I needed, including the whole list of issues that I encountered on Ubuntu Touch as well. Then I had a steps counting app that never worked properly, a translation app that kept failing all the time. I have Weber, which is a nice app to turn a website into a web app inside of your Ubuntu Touch system, which is neat. And I also used Pure Maps, which is a maps application, and it works decently enough. It's fast, it's responsive, you can view your directions, you can view navigation, you can view points of interest. It's decent enough for most day-to-day needs. Now that's just for the stuff on Ubuntu Touch itself, but of course, I also relied heavily on Waydroid over these 30 days. On Waydroid, I accessed YouTube Studio, which is what I use to monitor all my channels. This is currently the Warhammer channel, for example. I also used Discord to communicate with other people as well, including my work colleague on that Warhammer channel, which is pretty neat too. I also used Facebook Messenger, which I'm not going to open because those are private conversations for people who don't want to use WhatsApp or don't want to use basic text messaging. I used Babel as well for learning Italian, because that's where we're going next on vacation, probably. So I'm freshening up on my Italian, which is way better than my Portuguese at least. I also had the WhatsApp application if need be. I had the Warhammer 40,000 application as well, because that's a game I play, and the app is pretty much mandatory if you want to play that game to have all of the rules. And I had the Proton Pass application, which is very useful for my passwords and most of my two-factor authentication stuff that I transferred to it, and my workout app as well, plus Proton Mail and Firefox in case I ever needed another browser than the one Ubuntu Touch provides. This might all sound like everything went really well then. The interface is good, the applications work, Waydroid works, so what's wrong with this? Why aren't more people using it? Well, the main problem is just because it is available there doesn't mean it works fantastically well in there. For example, on Ubuntu Touch, yes, I do have applications that support Nextcloud, but for example, I don't have a good solution to sync my photos to Nextcloud, which is what I use for syncing. So not having that kinda sucks. I could use the Android app on Android, but then it means I need to take all my pictures from Waydroid and its camera app, not from Ubuntu Touch. So that's one thing I need to juggle mentally as I'm trying to do stuff. Second, Waydroid is not a perfect solution whatsoever. There are plenty of problems with it on this phone specifically. Generally, Waydroid on a phone works, I think, a little bit worse than it does on a PC. First, notifications. There is no bridge for your notifications from Waydroid to Ubuntu Touch. Anything you receive on Waydroid will not appear in the little notifications tab of Ubuntu Touch, meaning you have to hit back and forth between the two. You can receive sound notifications from Waydroid directly, so you know something happened if your phone is within hearing distance and you're okay with having those sounds. The problem is you can't always hear that, and then you need to open the phone and you need to go to Waydroid to look at the actual notifications, which is not ideal. And I know that Waydroid can have a bridge for notifications because when I use it on KDE on Linux, KDE does have the notifications from Waydroid appearing as system notifications. So it is probably doable on Ubuntu Touch as well, but currently it doesn't work. The second issue is there is no copy-paste between the two. So I can select something and I can copy it from Waydroid, but then if I go into my Ubuntu Touch system and I try to paste some text, if I try doing that, it's just not going to let me. There is literally no paste option in there. When I long press, I cannot paste. There is nothing in the clipboard. Same in reverse, I can copy something from Ubuntu Touch, and when I try to paste it inside of Waydroid, this is just not gonna work. I can paste, and it's pasting null, which means there is no clipboard whatsoever being shared. Again, this is something that works on a Linux PC. I can copy-paste from Waydroid and to Waydroid and my Linux desktop on KDE. So this should be doable as well on Ubuntu Touch at some point, but it is just not integrated currently. And the main issue that this creates is that this completely separates the two operating systems, Ubuntu Touch and Waydroid. And in some regards, it is good because it means that when I want to just use a phone as a tool, no distractions, no idling around, no scrolling, I can use Ubuntu Touch itself. It's a great interface, it's very nice, very easy, very user-friendly, no problem specifically. And when I want to go dilly-dallying around and do some more social stuff, I have Waydroid, which I decide when to go in and I'm separated from it. The main problem is sometimes you want the two to communicate. For example, during my vacation, at some point I wanted to connect to a website using the Morph browser in Ubuntu Touch. But this doesn't have my login saved. My password manager is not available on Ubuntu Touch. It's Proton Pass. And so I needed to go to Waydroid and I just wanted to copy the password. That is not possible. So I had to memorize it and retype it. And of course I made mistakes and it didn't work. Same with two-factor authentication codes. This was not practical. So I ended up using Firefox on Waydroid instead, but I had to redo the entire process. I had to redo my shopping cart that I had done. And then when I wanted to pay, obviously I couldn't because it asked me for a confirmation from my bank and I don't have my banking apps on Waydroid. We'll talk about this a little bit later. Here, Waydroid also had issues. Any application that tried playing video, for example, GIFs in Discord or YouTube videos in YouTube, they froze the entire Waydroid container, which meant I had to shut it down and restart it and try to avoid the videos. So, for example, Discord did not work at all in the beginning, and I had to change the settings to not autoplay anything that had video, because if it did, it would crash and burn the entire Waydroid container. This was fixed by disabling that, but anytime someone sends me a video and I click play in Waydroid, it stops and it crashes, which sucks. But Waydroid is not the only place where I encountered issues in Ubuntu Touch. The first main one is disconnections. Sometimes, I don't know why, I am connected through a cellular network. I used roaming when I was in Portugal as well, but here, when I'm back home, I don't. I'm connected to a Wi-Fi network as well. I should have connections. And sometimes, applications just decide out of the blue that no, you're just not going to have any network connection anymore. Of course, I can't reproduce it reliably when I'm recording this, but it happened quite a lot before the update to Ubuntu Touch. Now that I'm on that beta for Ubuntu Touch, it is the beta for version 24.04.2. Now that I'm on that beta, it works much, much better. I have way fewer disconnects, but I still have some randomly from time to time. That's annoying. I also had a few bugs here and there. The Open Store, for example, sometimes just failed to install an app and then it wouldn't even load anything anymore for a long, long while. The Gallery app is sometimes extremely slow to load your photos. Let's look at how long it takes. I'm just opening it right now. It already has all the thumbnails loaded because it already had them. But here I'm opening the app and it's still loading. It is not fast in the slightest. Now, finally, there we go. I have all the photos. Granted, my photo list is extremely long. Like I have virtually every single photo I ever took in my entire life. But if I go, for example, to the events view, it is rough. It stutters quite a bit. It is not very fast, not very responsive while it is loading new stuff. It is taking quite a bit of time to load things up. So not the most interesting app. It looks really good, but it is kind of stuttery. It's gone better in Ubuntu 24.04.2, the beta I'm on, but it is still pretty stuttery at times and not the best app I ever used. Also, this issue, the what's new thing, you have to have the app open in the background at all times. If you don't get notifications. Plenty of apps work like that on Ubuntu Touch. That's really annoying because it means that sometimes you will forget to open the app, you'll miss notifications, and you won't get any information. Then you'll open them 5 hours later and realize you missed something important. This happened a few times during those 30 days, and it was not fun. Now, the way you handle this is using Ubuntu Tweak tool. You have various changes that you can implement and tweak, and you can go into an application, select the app, and say prevent app suspension. So once it is open, it will never close automatically in the background, and you'll be good to go. It would be much better if you could just have notifications, even with the app closed, because that's how notifications are supposed to work. The keyboard was pretty bad at recognizing taps as well. So on most modern keyboards, like on iOS and Android, when you type your finger and you're between two keys, there will be a predictive thing happening in the background that will automatically detect which key is more likely that you tried to press, and it will automatically fix the word in real time. This did not happen for most of my time on Ubuntu Touch. It just typed whatever it thought I hit the most part of my finger on. And so it resulted in absolutely horrendous typing experiences. Again, with 24.04.2, I don't know what they did, if they moved to a new version of Mallet, which seems to be the keyboard they use, but it's much better. It now detects words much better, and the autocorrect is way less aggressive as well, which means I can now type more comfortably. But for the most part of those 30 days, it kind of sucked. Now it feels much, much smoother to use. Now, what almost broke this experiment for me is two things. First, the banking applications. They are just not available on Waydroid, at least for the two banks I have, the bank for my company running this Linux channel and the Warhammer channel, and the bank for my personal finances. Those two apps don't work on Waydroid. They detect it is rooted or not an official thing or whatever. I tried using a few solutions like Magisk, but I could not get them to work on Waydroid and Ubuntu Touch. Everything you needs a little script with Python or something, and it just doesn't run with the terminal of Ubuntu Touch. You don't have access to all the Ubuntu packages, so it's just not functional here. Now, I don't need those banking apps every single day, but I do need to have them on the go sometimes. And it means the only solution for me, reliably, is to use a second phone that is lying around somewhere on the desk where when I need to confirm a bank transfer, for example, which happens because I do pay a bunch of invoices from time to time, and I need to confirm those bank transfers using the banking app. The other alternative would be to use mostly PayPal to pay people, which I could just confirm using a two-factor authentication code, which I can get on Waydroid with this, but this doesn't work for transferring money from an account to another one. I would still need to confirm that with the app, even if I use the website for my bank. The other solution is to ask my bank to disable this feature, in which case they will give me a one-time code that is always the same that I need to enter, which then spawns an SMS or a text message with this other code that I need to type. So it's a two-code solution. It is way less secure than paying by confirming on the app, and I don't really want to do that. The second really annoying thing that almost broke this experiment is the lack of integration between Waydroid and Ubuntu Touch. No copy-paste is a real pain, no notification sharing is a real pain. With those two issues fixed, I could probably very reliably use that phone every day without any frustration. Remembering where you store something, is it through a Waydroid or is it through Ubuntu Touch, doesn't quite matter. It would be better if they mapped the two, like all the pictures folder from Waydroid is mapped to the pictures folder of Ubuntu Touch. You can, I think, do that from the terminal of Ubuntu Touch, which maybe I should do. Maybe that's going to be a little bit easier, but they do need to implement the clipboard and the notifications. It works on a Linux desktop. It should work on a Linux phone as well. In the end, I was able to spend my full week of vacation with just this phone. The only thing I missed was once a payment. I wanted to pre-order something for Warhammer and I couldn't pay for it online because I did not have my banking app, and trying to pay online asked me for a confirmation on a phone that I just did not have with me. So I wasn't able to pay for that, but that's it. The rest of it worked absolutely fantastically. And yes, there are issues and problems, but generally, I'm gonna keep using it. Yes, I'm gonna stick with this Linux phone because it does everything I need apart from the banking app, and there are solutions for that. A second phone or disabling something or using PayPal more, I'll see, but it is doable. I can avoid using it. I fully understand that this is not something that most people will be able to do. Most people will not be able to use an Ubuntu Touch phone. It's gonna be missing too many things, too many features, and all the back and forth between Waydroid and Ubuntu Touch will be annoying. If you don't use Nextcloud, you also don't have many syncing solutions either, or you're just going to use Waydroid all the time, and at that point just use an Android phone. The only thing I really want to see happen is a notification bridge for Waydroid to Ubuntu Touch. It exists on Linux, it should be doable on Ubuntu Touch too. I don't know how complicated the development of that is. Same with copy-paste. It also exists on a Linux desktop. It should probably exist on Ubuntu Touch too. Now, if I'm even greedier, support for extensions in the Morph browser, the ability to install, for example, the Proton Pass extension, so I can have all my passwords in Ubuntu Touch and log into various websites without having to go to Android to do that. That would be pretty fantastic. And a good Nextcloud Photos syncing solution, because currently Ghost Cloud, at least for me, doesn't work. Some people report that it does. It doesn't for me. It doesn't sync anything, and it sucks. It's very annoying. I want my photos taken on my phone to land on my computer without having to plug it in, which is what I do currently, but it's not as practical. So that's it. That's my experiment with Ubuntu Touch. It was good and annoying at the same time. It is going to remain a little bit annoying for a while, but I'll be honest, the beta for Ubuntu 24.04.2 fixed a lot of the issues I had, and that really made me think after 2 weeks, I'm not gonna stick with it. At the end of my vacation in Portugal, I was done. I was saying, I'm not keeping it, I'm not using it, it's not good enough. But then I saw the beta and the list of features and I said, I'm gonna give this a shot, because I don't want to make this 30 days video without having tested that, because if that releases 2 seconds after the video, then I look like an idiot. So I installed the beta, and this fixed the browser, this fixed the keyboard, this fixed the random disconnects, this fixed the notch support, this introduced other bugs that are slowly being fixed on the daily builds. It's good. I'm very happy with Ubuntu Touch right now. There are issues, I would love them to be fixed, but I'm able to use it daily and I kind of enjoy it. And also the things that don't really work, like steps counting, like, okay, I can live without it. Who cares? I don't need to count my steps. I do the same circuit every day. I know how much I've walked. Anyway, this is probably not going to be everyone. Plenty of people will just not be able to use this because too many missing apps. But for me personally, it's great, and that's yet another de-locked down system. I know it's not truly Linux because it runs on Halium, so it's sort of an Android base or whatever, but it's more Linux than Android ever was in terms of the philosophy, the applications, and the mentality. You even have a full Linux terminal in there. Anyway, this will conclude today's video. I hope you enjoyed listening to it or watching it. And of course, I'll leave you in the capable hands of our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. Now, of course, Tuxedo doesn't make phones, they make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux pre-installed, and they're really fantastic devices. They have a big range of computers. They will cover every need, every price point, plenty of options to have an integrated GPU, a dedicated GPU, various power levels for your CPU, various RAM amounts, storage amounts, multiple SSD bays, whatever. You know how this works. You can just configure your device, basically, have your keyboard layout of choice, have your own logo engraved or no logo at all if you prefer. The only devices I've been using for the past 3 years, maybe 4 even, are Tuxedo computers. I currently edit everything on one of their desktops. I used one of their laptops for a long while as my main production device as well, and I still have that laptop and use it to write books. They're really good, their devices are solid, their customer support is good as well. They are based in Germany, but they ship to most countries in the world. Do check them out using the link in the description below. Anyway, this will conclude today's video. You know what to do, plenty of buttons, links, comment sections, whatever, it's all down there in the description. And of course, I guess you'll see me in the next one next week. Bye!